Mud and open skies of the Thames estuary, a landscape littered with the debris of human activity down the centuries. Evocative, but also toxic. At Tilbury, the shoreline is mostly carcinogenic metals, broken glass, plastic and asbestos.
So not only is it the stuff you can see, bits of fabric, glass, plastics, but also you could have thrown away things like PCBs and solvents that we wouldn't be allowed to now.
And what toxics have you found in here?
We've found concentrations of metals like arsenic, cadmium, zinc, lead, so the kind of things you recognise as being toxic. Packet of peanut sweets, they were 3p. So somebody threw this away in, I don't know, 1975, 1980, and they thought they'd thrown it away, and they haven't. They've basically just put it on a beach in Essex. Right. We haven't solved the problem at all. All we've done is we've moved it, and this is going to be a huge problem for the next generation to solve.
Layered like poison strata, a vast London landfill, now eroding, slowly spewing its contents into the Thames and North Sea. So all manner of ancient rubbish is quite literally falling out of the landfill onto the beach. Glass, asbestos, you name it, plastics, microplastics being washed out through the Thames estuary into our oceans. Now we can argue all day long about who owns the foreshore, who owns the footpath, who owns the landfill site. Doesn't really matter. What matters is this: nobody is doing anything about this. There are at least 20,000 historic landfills in England, but let's put them to one side, because there are also hundreds all the way up the east coast, down the west coast, round the southwest peninsula, and right along the south coast. At least 1,200 coastal landfills now at risk from flooding and erosion. That's 1,200 toxic time bombs on a large scale, with the potential to go off all around our coast.
Yes, yeah. Yep. And those are the sites that we know are either on eroding coastlines or they're in the flood risk zone, so we know they're vulnerable.
300 miles northwest, the Lakeland Fells backdrop the shipyards of Barrow and Furness. In the foreground, oyster catchers probe the marshes, and cattle graze on another vast coastal landfill. It too slipping into the Irish Sea. But here at least Cumbria County Council has tried to thwart nature. Tens of thousands spent protecting the landfill from the sea with this rock barricade. But as the landowner here tells us, it's the sea that's winning.
We're seeing higher tides, bigger storm surges. It's happening more and more frequently. Where it might have been a storm surge every 10 years, now it's nearly every year. And it's washing away our land.
The precious ecology of Walney Marshes and the island's famous seal colony now have a vast failing landfill as their nearest neighbour. Locals blame increasing storm surges, the global climate crisis accelerating the local one.
We have an almighty fight on our hands, there's no question about it. So we need some brass from the government to really make this work long term.
And if you don't get it, what could happen?
Well, I think you're just going to see Walney crumble away bit by bit, and this is what you're seeing in front of you right now.
Yet, if the landscape is right, and with a little money, extraordinary things can happen. Down south again, and further down the Thames estuary this time, the Two Trees Nature Reserve. In fact, it's just another huge London landfill, but with careful covering of soil and fringed with precious protective salt marsh and mudflats. It is stable and safe, rich in bird and insect life.
Nature has retaken its place. It's worked its magic, and you can see from what's behind me, I mean, all of the blossom, all of the scrub, all of the birds. It's worked its magic, and we've got a fantastic nature reserve.
But as we've seen across the country, many sites are not protected from the sea by marshes. England's dirty secret is now being unleashed into our oceans. So they're the good, the bad and the ugly of English coastal landfill sites. Well, we're joined now at the magnificent surroundings, frankly, of the Thameside Nature Discovery Park, a real success story. Just a few miles up from that successful site at Two Trees you saw a few moments ago. Stuart, why don't you go in and have a look at the cranes behind me? Because what's happening here, it's a kind of intermediate, 808 hectares of successful nature reserve here, but they're still at work. Those cranes used to put London's refuse and rubbish
into this site, and now they're covering it over and making it safe from the kind of appalling sites we've seen further up at Tilbury, to preserve the landscape. And what a landscape it is. You probably can't hear, full of skylarks, long-eared owls, short-eared owls, barn owls, a magnificent success story. But it's clear from what we've been seeing the length and breadth of the country that there are a lot of sites which are clearly in nowhere near this sort of condition, and they are a toxic, an ongoing toxic threat. It needs central government money, brass, as the councillor said earlier. Back to you in
Alex.
London.
Thank you.